Hi guys, it's Carlo here. Thank you for listening to our latest episode. It's the support of our community like you that allows us to continue to grow and make this into something truly extraordinary. If you enjoyed today's episode and you would like to listen to it without the interruption of ads and maybe even experience some bonus content, I'd invite you to join us on our newly launched Patreon. And if maybe that's not something you can do right now, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting on places like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, all that good stuff. You'll find us under @Millennials and Community for pretty much all of those. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to episode number 1 of a brand new season of the Millennials and Community podcast. Join Matt and Carlo as we share some of our favorite moments from last season, explore the feedback we got from you, our valued listeners, and set the stage for what we want this new season to hold. Thank you for being part of our community.
Well, hello everybody. We're really glad to be back with you. My name's Matt. This is Carlo. This is the M.A.C podcast. We're starting off our second season, and we're starting it off, in what we feel is a really nice reflective way, reminiscent of the rest of our work, which is let's take a look back in the season that was. So today, to kick off season 2, we're going to start by looking back at season 1. What are some of the things that we really treasured, that we learned, some of our hopes for the next season. And then we want to talk to you a little bit about the name M.A.C and what is going to be different going to season 2 and why we decided that it was important for us to make a bit of a change. So, as always, we're going to kick things off with a bit of a question. Now, some of you who have watched us on YouTube, you'll be very accustomed to seeing the cards that we typically have used for our questions. We're growing up, we're evolving, and truth be told, we've ran out of good cards. So we have consulted our favorite, everybody's favorite.
The oracle of the internet.
Yeah, ChatGPT, and asked it to create some new questions for us. Luckily, ChatGPT has infinite cards. Shout out OpenAI. So our first one to kick things off, and I'm going to ask Carlo here, if your life was captured in a sitcom title, what would the sitcom title be? If you were going to capture your life as the name of a sitcom, what would the name of that sitcom be?
Man, okay.
And if you want, is just kind of stall so you have a little bit of time to think, you can either do a parody on a really common sitcom title, or you can think of a sitcom title just out of thin air, however you want to.
Like, the first thing that comes to mind immediately is Just Goofing Around.
Nice.
And I feel like that would be a great 1980s sitcom with like the really long opening sequence with like a full song that describes all of the characters.
And a 30-second freeze frame at the end.
Well, jumping.
Yeah.
I'm going with Just Goofing Around.
Love it. I think mine would be 2.5 Jobs. One of my favorite sitcoms was 2.5 Men, albeit I realized it didn't age well. However, great sitcom in its time. And so, yeah, I think for me, it would be 2.5 Jobs, because I think that just really describes a lot of the things that I always have on the go.
Fair enough.
Beautiful.
I like it.
Well, we're going to take a little bit of a trip down memory lane now. We're going to talk about the season that was in season number 1 of the M.A.C podcast. We'll take turns kind of asking each other a couple of reflection questions as we move through and really set the stage, set the scene for season number 2. So start things off. Carlo, what was your favorite moment or episode? Like, what was your favorite part of season 1?
Like, the whole season was an amazing ride, an amazing learning opportunity. But I think the favorite parts for me were our guests, right? We had 2 guest episodes, and the first one was a group of other men that are just very near and dear to our heart. We had them all gathered around the day after our first night at a Stampede here in Calgary, where some of us were feeling good, some of us weren't, but the conversation was phenomenal. Everybody got on this wavelength of just, great ideas and great comments, and that felt so nice. And then our other guest episode was my little sister, So getting to hear her from almost a little bit of a different light, as this grown-up businesswoman rather than this dorky little sister was an amazing opportunity. And there's just something about having the people you care about share in some great ideas and great conversation with you is that just so enjoyable, so wonderful to have. So those are probably my favorite moments.
Very, very cool. Very cool. I'd have to say for me, certainly our guest episodes were wonderful. It's so nice to have a bit of extra different color to the conversations by having additional people be a part of it. I think for me, it comes to, there's two moments I think that really stand out as things where I like really sat back and was like, wow, that was really, really cool moments. The first one was our AI episode. I feel like our AI episode was the most challenging for me because I know the least about it, but I feel like it challenged me the most in terms of trying to integrate different perspectives or ways of thinking about AI in ways that I just hadn't considered. And so I really enjoyed that journey that you took us on, looking at AI. And in a similar vein, I really, really enjoyed our Barbie movie episode.
That was a fun one.
For me, I think it really displayed some difference in perspectives, different ways of considering information. And I think that some of the different perspectives that each of us shared are reminiscent of different perspectives held, hopefully, by our audience. So hopefully there's some relatability there. And it just felt fun to have some of those conversations that, the Barbie movie can either be taken as a very superficial, fun, light movie, or it can be taken a lot of depth in terms of some of the inherent meanings around feminism and patriarchy and some of those things. And so it's really fun to try to get in and unpack some of that.
And I feel like that's probably very common of most media, whether it's now or earlier. Like you think about all the books we read through school where our teachers would, well, what did she mean about this sentence? You're like, I don't know. She wrote a book. Why does it have to mean everything?
Reading comprehension is the worst.
Yeah. So I'm on board with you there.
Wonderful.
Those were great moments. The Barbie episode is definitely a good one for sure.
Very, very cool.
All right. So as we continue down this path of some of the things that we valued in our first season, one of the big ones for me that I'd like to ask you is, what do you think was your big takeaway? What's one lesson learned from that first season of our show?
Yeah, I think that, and we joked a lot about it during the season, but I think it was still a really big takeaway for me. Certainly if any of you were doing a drink counter on the number of times we use the word value, you'd be getting loaded listening or watching to our podcast. But for me, I think just different ways in thinking, considering the word value was such a massive part of the experience for me. And thinking about how people can define value in so many different ways. And I had never thought that something as simple as the concept of value could be so intrinsic to everyone individually. But that's something that I really learned and took away from the first season.
Well, and it is a really good point, because as we look at what this show means to both of us, I know for me, one of the big things is that we are providing a sense of value to people. And that can be so hard as a content creator, because you don't really know what it is people are going to take away from what you put out there, which is why in season 1, we said so many times over that in reality, we do this for ourselves because we find value in it, but the hope is that others will as well. So it's just an interesting mind game to try and have to figure out exactly what that means, not only to you, but to the people that are hopefully listening. I think for me, one of the biggest takeaways I had from our first season was this concept of vulnerability.
Man.
So there was quite a few moments where I used this show kind of unabashedly as just a sounding board. These are the conversations that Matt and I have on the regular, even when there isn't a camera on. So why would those conversations be really any different if the camera was on? And so there was things I struggled with throughout the year. There were things that I needed to bounce off of someone else, or even just hear myself say. And I always valued it very much because you always took an opportunity to express gratitude for that vulnerability. And I've even had some people that are listeners come to me and say, we appreciate that about your show. It's not common. And I think at the end of the day, that is maybe one of the things that sets us apart a little bit, is that everybody out there that's creating content, or most people out there creating content, seem only interested in showing you the highlight reel of life. But that's not really what life is, right? Life is those moments of uncertainty and those moments of trying to figure things out. And I think that being truly vulnerable in a way where, you might have a random person send you a message and say, hey, this is what I thought about that moment of vulnerability. I think there's no greater opportunity for growth out there. So that was one of the big things. It's just how important, as much as I've always tried to be vulnerable, just how important it is that I am.
Well, I think it showcases too the importance of making sure that you have people in your world that you're comfortable being vulnerable with.
Yeah.
Not everybody is going to be comfortable in the way that you are expressing your vulnerabilities on this platform. Like, forget the fact that this is posted and streamed publicly to whomever would like to listen or watch, but even the act of saying things to a camera is daunting as hell.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what it really reaffirmed to me is that the importance of having those people in your life, putting yourself in a position where you've got the supportive relationships that allow you to be that vulnerable. And I think that's really, really important too, because, cameras and microphones aside, I don't think that either of us could afford ourselves that level of vulnerability if we didn't know that was going to be received in a positive way.
Yeah, because vulnerability is scary.
Yeah.
It's very scary. So if you don't have somebody that you can speak genuinely to, it leaves so much on the internal table that you just can't share. So you're very right.
Yeah. So we kind of talked about what we learned as far as the content, I suppose, what we learned from the content of the podcast. We also now have one season in the books of being podcast hosts. So what is it that you learned about being a podcast host or hosting a podcast?
Like most things worth doing, it's hard work and frustrating. Right? The amount of time takes, the amount of time that it takes to set up everything, to do the recording, to do the editing, to create the social media content. And it's never that you expect a massive amount of people to all of a sudden come out of the woodwork and find your show and like, share and subscribe and do all those things. But you do expect there to be at least a little bit of feedback and a little bit of, engagement. And sometimes you'll do something that you think is so good. It's that perfect social media clip, and it gets like 10 likes. And you're like, oh, like I worked so hard on that one. And it's not, it sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with the quality of the content. Sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with how you felt about it or how other people felt about it. It could just be the time that it was posted, the way the algorithm looked at it, the anything. And I think at the end of the day, it was somewhat humbling and also very eye-opening to have those people that do genuinely listen to our show on the regular continue to provide us with that feedback and that engagement, even when it felt like the rest of the world as a whole was ignoring us.
Yeah, I definitely, I want to make it really, really clear for everybody who is listening or watching. Carlo does the majority of the heavy lifting on this show. So when I say it's hard work, please take it with a grain of salt, because Carlo does the lion's share of the work. What I think I really, certainly it is hard work. What I definitely learned hosting a podcast, and it really is the commitment to the time that you're going to invest in it. So often we have these dreams, these aspirations, these things that we want to accomplish or want to do, and we fall short simply because we don't protect the time to do it. And I know that had this been me wanting to do a podcast on my own, that wouldn't it wouldn't have sustained the entire first season, or certainly wouldn't have had the momentum that we continue to have by pushing each other and supporting one another through it. And so what I've learned about hosting a podcast is having a partner or a team around you that is supportive and is going to push you towards those goals is so critical. And that's true, of course, not just of hosting a podcast, but anything. You need to have the team in place to be able to help support you, push you, sometimes drag you to your goals. Because scheduling time is not easy, but when you know that you're accountable to somebody else, it makes it a lot easier to do.
Well, and I was going to make a comment about the scheduling, because there are times that I'll message Matt and be like, hey, so the next episode, or the last episode we have recorded comes out next week. When are we recording again? And he'll be like, well, I've got, 2 hours, 3 weeks from now on a Tuesday. And then after that, it'll be another month. And you're like,
so you think he's exaggerating? This is actually a direct quote.
Like, ridiculous. And then my response will usually be, you can't find an hour some other time. And then we'll, back and forth a little bit. So yeah, there's definitely some challenges in doing this kind of thing. But you're absolutely right. It's this idea that we bounce back off of each other, because there are moments in time where, like, I look at the work that I have to do to get everything ready, and I message Matt and I go, I just don't feel like doing any of this for next week's episode. And he'll kind of like hype me back up, and we'll chat a little bit further about what we want the show to be and all those kinds of things. And it'll start to hype me back up and get me going. So speaking of that, what do you want this show to be? What's your hope for this next season of M.A.C and where we're going, and how do you want it to impact people?
Yeah. So I think for me, what I'm really, it's three things that I want. I want the show to be relatable. Like, I would love for all of you to feel that you are able to experience something or be a part of our conversation in such a way that it is relatable. You can connect to it. I also want it to be entertaining. Certainly it would suck to just turn something on and feel like it's just droning on. Like, we love all of you listening to our voice. We also don't want to be the calm app. Like, we don't want to be that thing that puts you to sleep every night. So, we want to be entertainable. I want us to be relatable to you. I also want for you to have these moments where you just think to yourself, I hadn't thought of that. I've thought about that thing, but I've never considered that thing from that angle. And so I guess I want for season 2 for us to be able to give you different angles, different lenses by which to see different things that we talk about.
Yeah, and that's always been kind of what we thought we were bringing to this space, is that we're just these regular guys, regular millennials, living life, that are trying to bring a perspective from a sense of experience that maybe some other people don't have. And it was always so important to me that maybe it would make people think a little differently about a challenge that they're going through, or something like that. And I think for me, the big wish and the want I want for this show is that the community part actualizes. In season 1, we tried this Discord idea, and unfortunately it never really took off. I think we had maybe 1 or 2 people join in, and there just wasn't a lot of engagement in there. And that's okay. Like, you try things and sometimes they don't work. But my hope would be is that as we find these like-minded people, because if you're going to sit and you're going to listen to a half an hour to an hour long podcast with 2 guys in a room, you probably have the same thought processes or close as we do, right? Otherwise, why would you listen to us? So that means as we find these like-minded people that listen to this show, that engage with this show, I would want there to be a sense of community that grows out of that. I want there to be, dare I say, maybe some friendships that grow out of it, so that when there is something going on in your life, then you can find the vulnerability for it, there's going to be someone that's going to help you through that and help engage with you to, be your sounding board. Because like Matt said, it's so important that you have that in your life, and not everybody does.
Yeah.
So if we could create a group where you can find those people for you, that would be like my ultimate goal of what this show would be.
Yeah. And let's be really clear about something. I mean, I want to push back on something you said, because I think it's really, really important. You just shared that like we're two regular guys that are doing this thing in hopes that we can like support and create this community of people to support each other. I don't think either one of us thinks that we're regular guys. So let's be really, really clear about this, because I don't think that either of us thinks that we're regular guys. I think that we both feel that we have something that we can offer, because otherwise we wouldn't feel that there is enough of us to be able to present something worthwhile to be listened to. But here's my thing when I think about that, because both of us have an ego. Let's just call a spade a spade. Both of us have an ego. Both of us want to be heard. Both of us like the idea that our voice, our message, our content is out in the world. What I want, though, is through this process of being able to create something that hopefully is resonant, entertaining, and sticks with people, offers that different lens. I want to have that different lens too. I want all those things for me.
Yes.
And I get a lot of those things by listening to other podcasts, listening to other creators. But I also experience that by having those conversations with you. And so in the same way that I want us to be those three things, I want to experience those three things, because that's what humbles me. That's what keeps me growing. And let's be really, really clear. Both of us need to be humbled. And so I hope that we can create a space where we can do that for each other, so we can both continue to grow.
Wow. Just don't lump me in with you, buddy. No, you're right. All of those things that we want for everybody else, we want for ourselves. And I was even thinking today, it's been 3 months since we've recorded?
Yeah.
Right? I missed it. I felt as a person lesser without this time to converse and to put ourselves out there. So even as we're in the throes of it now, just recording this first episode of season 2, it feels like home, right? So very much it's all the things that you said, and yes, I guess I'll take the not humble card.
So with that in mind, we've talked a little bit about recapping our first season. We've talked a little bit about our hopes and dreams for season 2. You'll notice there's a couple of different things. One, we're coming to you from a different space. And for us, I should preface this by saying that we're all so committed to learning, evolving, doing things differently, and trying to optimize the experience on our side, but most importantly for you as the audience. So we have a new space that we're working in. There's going to be more incremental adjustments throughout season 2 that we're going to be making to the space to try to optimize this sort of intimate environment that we have, so that we're not like a whole couch away and we can even like touch each other. You probably don't want to watch the YouTube to realize that wasn't as inappropriate as it sounded. And then you'll notice too that there is in fact a logo here that for those of you who are watching on something bigger than a phone, you can probably see that there's a change. And you may have even noticed a change when you logged in to look at the podcast today. And that is that we, as the M.A.C podcast, are changing our name. We are changing our name from the Men and Community Podcast to the Millennials and Community Podcast. And we thought we'd take the last couple minutes of this episode today, tell you a little bit about why we felt that it was important to make that shift for season 2.
Yeah, at the end of season 2, we kind of announced we were taking a small hiatus to sit back and kind of figure out what we wanted season 2 to be, because we didn't want to just continue down the same path. We really enjoyed season 1, but it became apparent to us as we talked back and forth that nothing that we really talked about was specific to men, right? A lot of our listenership is female, and there was nothing that limited anybody from listening, and we wanted that to be apparent in our name. We wanted it to be apparent for people that they could tune in regardless of their background, their age, their identification, whatever. We wanted them to have a place that they could come and gain all of the things that we talked about. So we started to think about, well, who is it really that we are? Like, what are we trying to identify as in this space? And it, as we looked back through our episode list, a lot of the things that we talked about, not exclusive to millennials, but something that is impacting us in pretty heavy ways now more than ever. And we realized, well, that's the frame of reference that we're coming from, is that we are millennials that are just trying to make a good impact in our communities and leave this world a little better than we found it.
Yeah, and I think that as we'll continue to explore throughout this season, there are so many things that millennials as a generation are experiencing in being sandwiched between the generations before and the generations after. And I think that there's so much depth there. And, we really, really felt that our previous iteration of the name was almost a little bit limiting, and we'd never want anybody to see the name Men and Community and automatically assume something about our podcast or lump us in with the sorts of content creators that, not to name names about ones that were indicted in Turkey or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyways, the point is that we hope that this rebrand and this shift helps to illuminate us in a bit of a way that allows us to come at a broader suite of content, ways that we can relate to more people. And even if you're not a millennial listening to this podcast, that's okay. Hopefully this is something that, we as two people from a millennial generation can create some things of interest and intrigue to help foster a greater understanding and more empathy across generations. And it just happens to be from the perspective of two millennials.
Yeah. And I think the word empathy that you use there is really fitting, because it does very much feel, as we go through the struggles of life, especially in our age bracket, where we are almost, it feels like we're somewhat unheard, right? I have conversations with my dad all the time, and he still very much fits under that baby boomer mentality of, well, this is the way things are and you can't change them, and this is why this is bad and why this is good and all those kinds of things. But I feel like as a whole, our generation has learned to be very fluid with things, right? We want what's best for everybody without it hurting anyone. And that's a big pill to swallow. It's a hard thing to do. And we've grown up in this world right now where it seems like everybody's out to take your money and everybody's out to, hurt you so that they can have more. And that's the complete opposite of what this show is about, in my opinion. This show is entirely about how can we benefit everyone? How can we create a world where people have others to lean back on, even when the rest of the world is trying to tear you down, right? So the name felt fitting. We still got to play off the Matt and Carlo thing, which was important to me. I'm a sucker for a good pun.
And we took a lot of suggestions on the M.A.C name, and some less constructive than others. So thanks to those of you who submitted your applications for what M.A.C could be as an acronym. We turned down every single one of you. But most importantly, we feel like we've landed on something, and this will be season 2, and maybe season 3 will have the same name. Maybe it won't. Maybe we'll keep exploring different macronyms.
Wonderful.
So that's going to be season 2, everyone. We're really, really excited to take you on this journey with us. We're going to try closing with another fun question. The way we opened, had some feedback that, some folks would like to see us end on the same fun level in which we started. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to share gratitude. So, we started talking about our sitcoms at the beginning. If your life was a sitcom, what would it be? Well, in true millennial fashion, because we're the first generation that really kickstarted these stupid social media things, if your life was a hashtag, what would your hashtag be?
Hashtag Y.
Like the letter or the word?
WHY. For 2 reasons. One, because having a why is important, right? Drives you in everything. 2, also like, why?
Love it.
Context is everything.
Love it. Love it. I think mine is going to be a little bit less double-ended. Mine would be hashtag playing with purpose or playful purpose, something with play and purpose. For those of you who know anything about me, that's pretty self-explanatory. And if you don't, stay tuned for like the next couple episodes. We're going to get like a little bit deeper into each one of us and reintroduce ourselves to the crew that's watching us. So really, really looking forward to that. Carlo, I'm feeling really, really grateful. We had the chance to go on a holiday together as a part of a bigger group not too long ago, and anytime you're going on any sort of a group experience, there's all sorts of dynamics and all sorts of experiences, and trying to navigate everybody wants to make sure that everyone goes on the excursion that they want and all the things. And one thing that I am really, really grateful for is that, you were your priority there was spending time with the people that were there, and to making sure that you had a really, really great time. And I don't think that you were really bothered by what we did or when we did it, just so long as we were doing it as a group. And so I really value and appreciate the way that you put the people in your life first and the relationships first, and the beach and the pool and the swim up bar second.
Close second. Appreciate that. My gratitude is to be home, to be back doing this again. There is so much value for me in sharing my voice, and to get to do it with one of my best friends in a way that is open to vulnerability and open to bad ideas and good ideas and silly jokes, and to just laugh and have fun. It feels really, really nice to be back, and I'm super excited for season 2. So I'm grateful to be here, and I'm grateful to be here with you.
Thank you. Well, with that is a wrap on the first episode of season number 2 of the Millennials and Community Podcast. We are thrilled to have you here on this journey with us, and we will see you for our next episode. As always, you know where to find us. I'm not going to say it out loud because we haven't officially changed all our social media handles yet. So if you don't know where to find us, then you better listen to episode number 2 when we can figure out what our new social handles will be. Dun, 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 dun. Take care, everyone.
Bye, guys. They're going to be the same.
They are going to be the same.